Hello everyone! As promised, here I am with a Gamera review. Thanks to all of you who voted in the poll last week to choose which film I'd talk about today. Here were the final results, with Gamera vs. Guiron taking 56% of the vote. And to anyone who thought I wasn't playing fair by saying that's the one I wanted you to vote for, I already had a pretty good idea that that one would win based on the poll results and comments from the last time I did this. I don't think my saying that made a whole lot of difference. Gamera vs. Guiron, the fifth entry in the Gamera series, was released by Daiei Film in 1969. It was directed by Noriaki Yuasa, who's considered the father of Gamera, and directed most of the films in the Showa series. The original title is Gamera Tai Daikaiju Guiron, which translates to Gamera against Giant Monster Guiron, or as this title card puts it, Gamera vs. Giant Evil Beast Guiron, which is laying it on a bit thick, don't you think? Or you may find it listed more generically as Attack of the Monsters. And here's a fun fact, there's a typo on the IMDb page for this movie where the original title is listed. If you put that through a translator, it translates to, "I'm sorry, I'm going to go to the fifth." Nice reminder there that IMDb, like just about every other site on the internet, is full of unreliable information. In this film, astronomy enthusiasts and scientists alike are abuzz about mysterious waves coming from an unknown source in outer space. Three children spot a spaceship landing with their telescope, but when they go to check it out the next day and the two boys climb aboard, it suddenly takes off, carrying them into space. The ship speeds through the stars, and luckily Gamera shows up to block a meteor with his face. When the ship lands on a planet, the boys encounter a couple space monsters and two aliens, the last of their kind. But are things on this planet more sinister than they seem? And will Gamera be able to rescue them in time? I'm not sure how I managed it, because this movie does have a certain place in pop culture, but I went into it knowing little about it. There were things that I recognized, of course, things that I'd seen before, like this part, and there were things that I'd heard about, like the Gamera song, but I knew no specifics, and I think that's the way to go. I enjoyed this movie a lot, and a good deal of my enjoyment came from how surprised I was by some of the things that happened and some of the turns the story took. So, if by any chance you're watching this video and you've never seen the movie and you think you'd like to, and you'd like to maybe be pleasantly surprised like I was, don't watch the rest of the video because I'm going to give away all those surprises. The majority of you watching this, however, probably have seen this movie in some form. The original Japanese version, the heavily censored American dub, the Sandy Frank American dub, or what's most likely, the edited version that was shown on Mystery Science Theater 3000. I have seen a decent amount of MST3K episodes, probably not a lot of complete episodes, but a number of best-of compilations and highlights reels, but I don't think I've seen more than a couple minutes of the Gamera ones. If I did, I forgot. Which is good, because I don't want to come on here and just repeat someone else's jokes. I'm also not going to just lampoon the movie, because that's not what I do here. Not that it wouldn't be easy. Let's face it, this movie's not a masterpiece, and it does provide ample fodder for mockery. For instance, number 1, it has a boring prologue that isn't really that long, but feels like a small eternity while you're waiting for the movie to get going. And after some groovy opening titles accompanied by some fun but generic 60s music, we get another dose of exposition from Dr. Scientist explaining why each planet in our solar system is uninhabitable, and it's like, come on! Number 2, this movie is very low budget. The production company Daiei would declare bankruptcy 2 years later, and you can tell that they were trying to pull off this sci-fi, fantasy, giant monster space adventure on a shoestring budget. The models, mats, and special effects are obvious, and the materials for props and suits look cheap. Despite the modest means, though, the set design for some of these interiors is interesting. The control center is pretty cool, so is the translation machine, and the hints of underwater scenery. They also equipped the station with a moving sidewalk. That I was less impressed with. It's so slow that it would be faster just to walk briskly or run. Number 3, so many things just kind of happen in this movie that you're supposed to take for granted. For example, outer space is a pretty big place, but Gamera just so happens to be cruising around right where the boys are passing by. And then, somehow, they're able to communicate with this giant flying turtle, and I couldn't decide if this part was funny or painfully awkward. Number 4, there's a 3-minute sequence of stock footage from previous films explaining how Gamera became known as a friend to children. You know how I feel about clip shows. And I could probably go on, but as silly and nuts and ridiculous as I expected this movie to be, and I can't say I was disappointed, I was surprised by how genuinely good some elements were. I watched this on Amazon Prime. All the Gamera movies, I believe, are currently free to watch if you're a Prime member, and they're the Japanese versions with English subtitles, which is what I prefer, because if I'm going to watch and review a movie, I want it to be the official, original article, not someone else's edit. First thing I loved is that both of the main kids are actually speaking Japanese. So many times in these movies, when they've had a white actor featured, he's speaking his dialogue in English, while everyone around him, everyone that he talks to, is speaking Japanese. It doesn't make any sense. It's not logical. And then later, in post-production, his lines are dubbed for the Japanese audience, so that's what we hear, and then they're translated in the English subtitles. Conversely, if you watch an American edit, everyone's been dubbed to speak English, often with sing-songy voices or phony accents. And chances are that the American actor who was in the film to begin with has been dubbed as well by somebody else. The one is illogical, and the other sounds and looks wrong. So I was super excited when I realized that the kid was really speaking Japanese, and that was really his voice. I couldn't believe it, and I kept scrutinizing him every time he spoke to make sure that his lip movement matched what I was hearing. These two kids carry on a smooth bilingual conversation, mostly in Japanese, with some English phrases slipped in here and there, and it's wonderfully realistic. Akio is played by Nobuhiro Kajima. This is his only movie. And Tom is played by Christopher Murphy. This is also his only movie. I couldn't find much info about him, and it didn't help that Christopher Murphy is a fairly common name. Hello to any Christopher Murphys who happen to watch this video. I found an American politician, a different American actor who was in The Abyss, but couldn't have been in this movie because he would have been 6 in 1969. I found a novelist, a bunch of businessmen, and a British politician who some confused people at Bing think is this kid all grown up. But that Christopher Murphy was born in 1947, and if you do the math, that would mean this boy is 22 years old. I don't think so. Reminder number 2, not to trust everything you read on the internet. Anyway, I don't know anything about him before or after he made this movie, but his IMDb page, for what it's worth, does say he was born and raised in Japan and thus learned to speak the language fluently. They made the same smart choice with Tom's mother, too, played by Edith Hansen, who was born to missionary parents in India and moved to Japan in the 60s. She still lives there and has acted in a handful of Japanese films over the years. So for these two non-Japanese characters who live in Japan, they cast actors who could speak fluent Japanese. I find this so satisfying. I like the kids well enough. They're cute and not really irritating. Yes, the repeated yelling of Gamera's name is annoying. Gamera! 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 And that plus Gamera's roar, which is more like a scream and it's like fingernails on a chalkboard to me. Yeah. But aside from that, I don't mind them. They do some dumb things, but they're kids, and they're more likable than the kids we've met in some other kaiju movies. I also like the subplot with the little sister, where she's back on Earth trying to convince people that the boys flew away in a spaceship, and they just laugh and shrug it off. In a film that's clearly geared toward children, here's a storyline that has universal appeal. The frustration of a child who's telling the truth and trying to get help, and the adults won't listen or take her seriously. I think every kid can relate to that on some level. Another thing I loved? The villains. And this is where it really helped that I didn't read anything about the movie before watching it. The two aliens, played by Reiko Kasahara and Hiroko Kai, inform the boys that they're on Terra, an undiscovered 10th planet in the solar system that's the exact opposite of Earth on the other side of the sun. This spooky, suspicious shot is our first introduction to them, but we're still inclined to trust these two women because they're friendly and forthcoming, and their names are Barbella and Florbella. They don't seem threatening at all.
あの子たちが食料として有害か無害か調べて必要があれば経口食料にするのよ
They're gonna eat them? This is one of the most evil plots I've ever heard. They're going to eat their brains raw so that they can absorb centuries of knowledge about Earth and sneak in undetected. They use telepathic mind control to find out the boys' favorite food, then whip it up in their 3D printer kitchen, I guess, and lace it with sleeping powder. The boys chow down and keel over, and the aliens grab one and shave his head. All the better to saw the top of your skull off, my dear. And they're just about to do it when they're interrupted. What the heck, movie? That part would have terrified me as a kid. Even as an adult, I don't like it. I do not like heads being cut or sawed open or drilled. No. I can't get over how mean-spirited and diabolical these aliens are, yet how nice they seemed at first. So deceptive. It makes this feel like some kind of extraterrestrial twist on a Brothers Grimm fairy tale. The boys' attempts to get away and outsmart them only make them angry and more malicious, especially the meaner one, who's so ruthless that when the other one gets hurt, she shoots her without hesitation. This is a kids' movie. I must say, though, I appreciate how simple it all is. Not too many characters, not a multifaceted conflict. It's just two kids, two aliens who want to eat them, a monster trying to save them, and a monster trying to kill them. It's beautiful. Among the various alternate titles that I already mentioned, you may also hear this movie referred to as Gamera vs. Guiron, with an L. The name Guiron is actually supposed to be Guilon because the sharp blade on the monster's head was inspired by this execution device. The name change came as a result of the linguistic mix-up of L and R sounds. The L sound is not common in the Japanese language, so it's a little harder for them to say, so it comes out as Guiron. It's kind of like the mix-up of TH and S sounds, which is how we have Masura and Mothra. If I may further complicate matters, though, saying it Gilon or Gilon doesn't sit well with me either, because while some people say it guillotine, I have always pronounced it the French way, where the double L becomes a Y sound. Guillotine. And this makes sense to me because most of the time when that term comes up, it's in association with the French Revolution, Madame la Guillotine. Saying it guillotine, it feels gross. So then that makes me feel like, well, Gilon isn't right either. Gilon, so is it supposed to be Gamera versus Gion? That's an entirely different spelling. So I'm just going to keep calling him Guiron and not worry about it, and I'm trying not to worry about whether it should be Guiron or Guiron. If I'm saying it wrong, people will pick me apart in the comments anyway. Guiron is Terra's watchdog, and obviously his head, or his nose if you'd rather, is shaped like a giant blade. It's a razor-sharp one, too, as we learn when we see him fight Space Gauss. Yes, when Gauss showed up, I was like, ugh, I can't get away from him. But he's not around for too long. This fight is amazing. It's incredibly violent. First, the way the laser ricocheted almost made me choke on my drink. Then Guiron slices one wing right off. It's a kid's movie. And then he deliberately slices the other one in close-up. and then he decapitates Gauss before chopping him up into little pieces. What the heck, movie? This is the most disturbing and astonishing fight scene I've seen in any of the Showa-era kaiju movies, and it might be the best scene in the picture. The way Guiron just slices Gauss up like a brick of cheese that's going to be served as an hors d'oeuvre at a fancy dinner. By comparison, Guiron's battle with Gamera once he arrives is not nearly as exciting. Our hero, Gamera's introduction, with his own jaunty theme song and everything, made us burst out laughing. He's basically like Superman in these movies, and that in and of itself is hilarious because, well, I don't want to be mean, but look at him. He doesn't exactly fill me with confidence. Technically, it's the main event, but I found the titular fight to be less interesting than everything else. The fight moves are very slow, with lots of swinging around and tossing, clunky movements, and no regard whatsoever for what's physically possible. Not that it really matters, I know, but still. Guiron has trouble attacking Gamera's shell, then Gamera gets all upset when Guiron zaps him with his ninja stars or whatever they are. Gamera's not just another pretty face, though. He scoops up some snow to soothe his wounds, and then successfully blocks the next 2 ninja stars, which ricochet back to Guiron, who clumsily turns around to avoid them. As cool as the Guiron design is, besides the giant blade sticking out of his head, there's not a lot to it. Being a quadruped, he ends up having to do a lot of that awkward, totally not a grown man crawling around on his hands and knees shuffle. And Gamera is pretty awkward too. Some highlights from this part of the movie: Gamera lays helplessly on his back underwater until a rock biffs him on the head. All fixed! Remember Godzilla's victory dance from Invasion of the Astro Monster? Not to be outdone, Gamera does something similar. That's right after the big moment where Gamera shows off his acrobatic skills. This is famous or infamous, depending on your point of view. I must say, though, I was a bit disappointed. I know, a giant flying turtle just did gymnastics on a parallel bar. How can you be disappointed? But, my mom and I both felt a bit disappointed that he didn't let go at peak momentum. He grabs on, he spins around, and then he goes back and slows down and dismounts, and I'm not sure what he accomplished with this maneuver. He does win the fight, though, and these are the luckiest kids in the expanded solar system, because Gamera saves them, the random missile launcher goes off, and Gamera uses one to kill Guiron, and the other just so happens to strike the building the evil alien lady is in. And then, through magic, Gamera repairs the spaceship and brings them back home. What a guy! There's a heavy dose of moralizing at the end, but moralizing is par for the course in these movies, and anyway, we can forgive them for that, because we just had such a good time! So I've watched 7 Gamera movies, 3 from the Showa era, the 3 that make up the Heisei trilogy, and the 2006 film Gamera the Brave, which I really liked, but in hindsight, it has so little in common with these other movies that I feel like it's about a totally separate, totally different character. After 7 movies, I still don't have a special fondness for Gamera, but I understand why other people do. He's fun, and he's more consistently the good guy than Godzilla is. Godzilla is kind of a wild card, whereas 9 times out of 10, especially if you're a child, you can count on Gamera to be your friend. And he's gonna do all that's totally possible to try to save you and save the world.
Let's go, Gamera! Gamera! Gamera!
One final note, this is something I found and I didn't know where else to put it in the review. The Italian release of this film gave it the title King Kong Contro Godzilla, and used these intriguing but baffling posters as advertisements. Either they mixed everything up in the most spectacular way, or they were sent a different movie that only Italians got to see. I hope you enjoyed this review. I'd love to hear what you think of this movie if you've seen it, or even if you haven't, so go ahead and share your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you later. Thanks for watching.